Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, people of all ages, welcome back to the Sticky Floors podcast. I am one of your hosts, CJ, and I am joined by Mr. Will. Once again, we are back with another movie to break down. And just so everybody knows, we are going to be talking about Monkey Man tonight. Monkey Man, depending on where you are, Monkey Man might still be in theaters. It's also available on DirecTV, but it's still a very, very recent movie. And as a result, there will definitely be some spoilers tonight. So if you have not seen this, you might want to just press pause, go watch it, and then come back. Or once again, if you just want to be not, you want to be spoiled, we'll spoil you too, and you can listen to this, and then you can go back and watch the movie and see if you agree with our assessments of the different parts. So with that said, I just want to just say good evening tonight to Mr. Will,
Thank you, sir. What's going on
and
with you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm looking forward to talking about this one. This is an interesting movie, and it's part of why we call this episode "Enter the Kid" is because it has so many references to Enter the Dragon. So I know we'll touch on those as we go along. But before we jump into that, man, let me pass it over to you for the synopsis.
Yeah, before I get into that joint, not just DirecTV, but you can also stream it on Apple TV, Amazon Video,
Okay.
Google Play, even YouTube and Vudu. Um, and of course, Microsoft stores. But yeah, it's still playing in the theaters. That's where I happen to
hmm
see it. I'm sure CJ saw it in the theaters as well.
I got a great story about
Oh,
that too.
word. Okay, okay, that's what's up. Um, but yeah, man, you can catch this pretty much anywhere. I recommend seeing it in the theater, depending upon your your at home entertainment system setup or whatever have you. Um, just because of the overall effect and everything, and plus, I like going to the movies anyway. But
hmm
with no further ado, we're gonna jump into a brief synopsis about Monkey Man. Having endured a lifetime of poverty, upheaval, and unspeakable tragedy, the anonymous and unassuming young man known as Kid, he uses the alias Bobby when getting the job in the restaurant as well, but affectionately known as Monkey Man, has finally reached a breaking point. Inspired by the legend of the mighty Hunaman, he has discovered a way to infiltrate the guarded enclaves of the city's sinister elite, fueled by a suppressed rage that has been boiling for years. This brutal yet revengeful thriller was the directorial debut of Dev Patel, who also stars as the protagonist. And it's
hmm
a very promising, sensational, yet again, thrilling and spectacular fights and chase sequences that showcase a very stylized brutality, which is sure to appeal to all that are very much diehard adrenaline junkies. Monkey Man is a symbol of embodying strength, yet fortitude, perseverance, and the unbreakable courage of one who has weathered the harshest storms that life can throw. With this, you have a metamorphosis that's complete, and the time for reckoning has come.
And there it is, and there it is. So yeah, you mentioned seeing this in a movie theater. That's where I saw it too,
Okay.
and it's funny. I went to see this in the movies, and the row. I usually always try to sit on the back row of movie
Mm,
theaters just because I don't like people behind me. Just
right.
from growing up and having people throw M and M's at you and everything in movie theaters. But so I'm sitting in, so I'm in the back row of the movie theater, and when I look down to my left hand side, I see like a guy was in there with his two kids, right?
Mm.
And you see how your eyes just popped up when I said that, right?
Yeah.
So he's in there. So I look down, and he's in there with it. Look, he had like his son. Son looked like he was like about 7, and then
Ooh.
his daughter. His daughter looked like she was about 10 or 11 years old, right? So I'm looking down there, and I'm like, this is Monkey Man. This isn't like Kung Fu Panda 4. You know what I'm saying? It's not. This ain't that movie. So I'm like looking, and I'm kind of like, what's gonna happen? And this joint gets really. You mentioned yourself brutally violent. It
Yeah.
gets real brutal and real violent really
Yes.
quickly, right? So I'm like, as it's going on, I'm looking at the movie. I'm kind of looking at his family to see what's going on, right? But now, after a while, the movie, I just got so engrossed in it, I didn't even pay attention to him anymore, right? At the end of the movie, though, right, I looked over, and the little girl looked over right at me, and her eyeballs looked like this. She looked it terrified, like she looked like she wasn't sleeping anymore. ever, right? And I
Oh
know
man.
I'm looking at it, I'm thinking like, oh man, his dad, he gonna have to say something to this
Yeah,
girl because
yeah.
I don't know what the little boy was thinking, but the little girl was definitely
She was
messed up
shook.
because
Yeah.
there's stuff in here that you got to be an adult to see
Yeah.
in terms of the level of violence that happens. So it was kind of like I was like, man, dog, what you do? What are you doing in
I
here?
guess he was giving it to
And
him raw and uncut, man.
jeez, but I mean, like, goodness gracious, I mean, whew, that was tough, man. So it's a little bit funny. Hopefully, she's all right now. She can go to sleep. But that was nuts, man. But yeah, man. You mentioned you touched on some points about definitely the nature of the film. Some of the things that the film is talking about. One of the major points in this is the idea of violence and retribution,
Mhm.
right? And in the modern, I would say, martial arts movie kind of thing, everybody's getting revenge.
Right.
Like you attack me, you try to hurt me, I kill 50 of your people. You steal my dog, I'm gonna burn down your house. You mess up my car, I'm gonna kill your family. Like people are really, it's like really extreme, right? And it's interesting because like this when I saw the previews for this movie, a lot of it, like even the previews kind of made it look like the Indian version of John Wick, right?
Mhm.
Which it's not. Which that's not what happens in it. And I thought about like John Wick. You think about that movie, Mr. Nobody. Like how that with that kind of violent story. This is so much different, and it made me appreciate the reasons why people actually decide, oh, I'm gonna get y'all for sure. Because
Mhm.
one thing about this movie, and I know I get into some of my cake, but man, these guys they earned this beating that they get from the kid. They earned it. Like you're watching it, like, oh no, I hope he gets them for sure, because
Mhm.
like you were way out of line. Like you deserve this. So like it just made me appreciate again like what like the idea of real retribution
Mhm.
and revenge looks like and the extent to which people will go to carry it out.
Yo, that's tough right there, man. First of all, you always have like the craziest stories when you go check out movies, man. Matter of fact,
Uh,
your story is kind of similar to mine, but except I was that dad that took my kids at a young age to, you understand, man. Like I
what was the movie that you took them to?
what was it, 100 Years a Slave? Yeah.
12 Years a
Yeah,
Slave.
12 Years a Slave. Or was it? No, 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 no. What's the joint? Is that the joint with what's the man who he directed it too and he was supposed to be portraying
Shweidel Ejiofor.
nah, then that wasn't him. It's a different. See, this is the sad part about, quote unquote slave movies because they're all the same story. Um
Mm.
but this is the joint with um the slave uprising in which what's my man's name? I'm trying to think of
Talking about Amistad,
no.
Jaimin
No,
Hansu.
no, no. This is one of the ones that came out maybe like 6 years ago because my kids were like 5 and 7. Um,
Okay.
oh man, I can't think of the name of this movie. This is killing me.
All right.
Nonetheless,
Well,
I
it'll come.
digress.
It'll come to you.
Either way, the point is, I'm taking them to the movie, and it was like back to back movies. I forget the first movie we saw was pretty good, and they were chill. I think it might have been
Mhm.
like Spider Man, one of the Spider Man movies. Um,
Mhm.
but then I took them to this joint and they see the cat getting whipped and the brutalized, like torture
Mhm.
and everything. They left that theater crying.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was young,
Yeah.
but I was like, yo, look, you got to learn about these things in school rather be with me. You know what I mean? I was on a whole,
You did. You pivoted to that
yeah,
joint.
real quick.
Hey, Daddy's just trying to show you the real
Right.
world.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, man.
That
And
was how you pivoted.
they told their mother she was heated.
Yeah.
Heated.
Yeah. You always gotta be. You always gotta be. Those ratings matter, man. Those ratings are they're there to help you.
Yeah,
Like when they say rated R, it is actually it is actually rated R, man.
dude, man, I kid you not. I just thought like, you know what, man, somebody's got to stick up their pants, and they're just really high strung, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why they give out these ratings. It's not until I've gotten older where I can value it a little bit more,
Mhm.
but I'm still like, you know, I'd rather you go with me to see X, Y, and Z. I could provide commentary and context. I can give
Hmm.
true historical background, et cetera, et cetera. I could tell you that it's a dramatization in order to sensationalize X, Y, and Z. But even with that said, um, yes, I wholeheartedly agree that um, the antagonists in this movie. So you got what is it, Queenie Kapoor, um, Baba Shakti, and my
Hmm.
man Rana. Like, yes, they deserve every bit.
Evil, evil people, man. They
Yeah,
earn this.
yeah,
They earn this.
they earn that
They
butt
earn this
whooping.
beating.
Yeah, they earn
They
that.
earn these beatings.
Yeah,
Yeah, man. So that was one of the things that I was thinking about. The other thing is just and you talk about it when you're talking about those characters. The intersectional level of corruption
mm,
that undergirds this whole thing, because you see this movie is also about this unique partnership in evil between the religious spiritual part of the society, the enforcement a part of the society, the business and the corrupt evil business part of the society, and then the political. And you have these four kinds of people that are playing these roles, and that's the real backdrop to a lot of what's happening in Monkey Man, because even though the main character played by Dev Patel is in individual conflict with some of these people, he's also in conflict with the systems that they represent and the systems of corruption and manipulation and abuse that they represent. And you see how many people are grinded up in that. So, like, within that club, the women that are in there, they're the prostitutes under this woman who, is very like graphic, and she's really almost like has no shame the way that she talks about wanting to get young girls into this business that she's in. And then you have the police chief who was the general, and just his like completely just violent vulgar ways. And then the priest, the spiritual leader, who's also extremely corrupt but gives this facade as this spiritual leader. And it just makes you question leaders, the people that are leaders of society, and the difference between the public face and the reality of who they really are.
it's funny you should mention that too, because all these things tend to appear at a crossroads in the real world, if you will. So when you
Hmm.
have individuals who are um, taking advantage of the masses for personal gain, obviously, they tend to do so through three pretty distinct means. One, religion. So you'll have a religious figure like a la Jim Jones, where you
Hmm.
get the colloquialism drinking the Kool Aid.
Yep.
You'll have, you know, especially nowadays here in the US, you will have individuals that are corrupt in places of government.
Hmm.
Some may think
Yeah.
of police or whatever have you, but it doesn't just stop there. There has to be an entire system in place to empower these people to feel as if they can do that. So
Yeah.
oftentimes you'll have like what's going on now with the trials of Trump and such, where you'll have some judges with questionable rulings and things of that ilk.
Hmm.
Um, and then it trickles down. And then, last but definitely not least, um, all of this is basically on the backs of some type of money pyramid scheme, finances, because that's the economic piece.
Yeah.
People are out for the money. Money is merely just a means of demonstration of power or the ability to move freely. So it can be power of choice or power of rule over others. But nonetheless, this triad is usually at work when you see these things develop. And of course, Monkey Man is no different, where you have um, my man Rana Singh, that's the general slash chief of police. Um,
Hmm.
the lady
He's
that
real. He's real evil.
yeah. The lady you speak of is Queenie Kapoor. She's basically a madam and
Hmm.
or human trafficker. And then of course, last but not least, Baba Shakti, which is funny because Baba means father in Arabic.
Hmm.
So it's not by coincidence that a lot of the things you see in this movie and the names, let alone the actual imagery, help to reinforce that point.
Yeah, and they're basically in the Death Star of evil downtown downtown India. They're all in one building all the time, waiting there. They like they everybody, they should play the Empire theme song whenever they're on the screen because of how evil these people are, man. But
Cue the music.
what were some points? Yeah, I know you had a couple points too in the culture
Yo,
section.
and the movie was Birth of a Nation. I couldn't think of Nat Turner in my head, and I couldn't think of
Oh
Nate
yeah,
Parker because
yeah,
I
Nate
could see
Parker.
I could
That's
see
what
it
it
in
is.
my
Yeah,
head
yeah,
or whatever. But yeah,
yeah.
it was Birth of a Nation. So I guess that's like
Hmm.
2016. So whatever
Yeah,
like
I saw
Marvel
that on my
joint,
birthday.
yeah, whatever Marvel joint came out, we did the back to back joint, and they were at the highest of
Hmm.
highs and at the lowest of lows. There
Yeah,
was no in
that joint.
between. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, man. But yeah, I definitely have a couple of points that I wanted to just comment with respect to the culture. Um, the first is the hero's journey or heroes' journeys and how they're
Mm.
displayed in the modern world. Um, so you have basically this presence of evil. It's overwhelming. The stench of it reeks throughout the entire movie. Like we just commented on, you got that triad of evil, kind of like a Cerberus or even a Hydra is the imagery that comes to play. Because if you cut off one head, you still got the other ones that are growing and still
Mhm.
have to deal with all these tentacles like an octopus. But nonetheless, evil is very real, and its presence is, like I said, overwhelming. There are dragons that still must continue to be slayed, especially in the modern world, because there's different means by which they can enact their terrible deeds. The protagonist, aka the kid, Bobby Monkey Man, he has this sense of a real world. He literally lives in the forest with his mother, and that's not by
Mhm.
coincidence. So you can think Enchanted, you can think of getting back to nature, primal. All these themes are evoked by the sense that they are in tune. They are what we would term in the U.S. as the salt of the earth, or people that are very in tuned with a very lax and realism type of living conditions. And then once that world, and it's inevitable, becomes um, totally run asunder, then you have what is the true reasoning or rationale behind why he does what he does. So in this case, his mother, unfortunately, in front of him, as she tries to protect him, is
Mhm.
brutalized in such a very demeaning way. Um, she is sexually assaulted. She is physically assaulted. Literally punches her in the face, slaps her in the face, throws her on the ground, and then the culmination of all that brutalization is her being poured on. Excuse me, gasoline being poured on her, and she being lit ablaze. And then, and
Mhm.
then the thing like that really stood out in my mind is him trying to put out the blaze with his hands. And this is
Yep.
very not
Yeah.
only is it very distinct, but it continues to repeat itself. Like, why are your hands messed up? Him doing things with
Yeah.
his hands, him coming
Mhm.
from a place where they worked with their hands. Um,
Yeah.
so like this thing of uh, hard work, determination, giving back to the earth. This is repeat throughout the entire movie. Um, so once he goes on the journey and he's seeking, revenge, vengeance, retribution, avenging, he encounters Rana, who unfortunately is at that time he's not prepared to actually deal with him in such a combative nature. So he's forced to retreat. He ends up
Yeah.
reconnecting.
He almost gets killed in the
I'm
process.
trying to be
Gets killed in the
diplomatic here,
process.
CJ.
Yeah. He almost gets killed in the process. I mean, he almost got killed in the process. Like.
But again, he goes back into the farce, reconnecting his
Mhm.
his his bonds, and he meets his mentor, ally, companion, compatriot, whatever terminology you wish to use. And this individual gets him grounded again, provides enlightenment,
Mhm.
and reconnects him spiritually with his origins and his ancestors. Once he decides, yeah, I've learned the lessons that I needed to learn, he goes back out into the modern world, the real world, city life, and he uses this time those skills in a manner in order to help his people by
Yeah.
winning the fight, getting some funds, hitting them off with the
Hmm.
bread, and then they're able to, say, oh, now we can save our village, our homes, or we can buy
Save
and
the church, yeah,
relocate,
in the
whatever have you.
area where they
Yeah.
live. Yeah.
Um, and it's not lost upon me either that this is it's almost like deja vu, which is why he's forced to act in the manner he is, because he saw what happened to his own people. They were
Hmm.
being thrust out of their home. And so in turn, he was determined not to let this repeat itself. And that's why he was able to give the money back to them. Fast forward, he's like, yeah, enough is enough. I'm going on the offensive. So there's no hesitation this time. And
Yeah.
he brings it to him like straight, like raw and uncut, boot to the chest to this guy, breaking necks, breaking backs, and it doesn't matter. Bullets ablaze, none of them touch him. Knives galore. Nah, they're
Yeah.
breaking
He
off of
gets his
somebody else.
revenge,
Yeah,
man.
definitely, definitely. So, this is just basically another story. You mentioned John Wick. I would say that I would buy into that. You mentioned that it wasn't. I guess like you were mentioning the trailers or whatever have you, and it gave you the false impression that this was a la John Wick. I think it
Yeah.
actually ties into that with the camera being unsteady and the intimate close hand to hand combat, man.
Yeah, it does it. It does it more so at the end, especially when he's got the all black suit
Yep.
on. I definitely, and especially the red lighting in the
Yeah.
certain
You
scenes,
see what I'm saying?
like it does do that. I think what I meant by that statement is just that I think the depth of the storytelling about the background of the kid
Got you.
and the laying down of the foundation of why he's seeking revenge and the emotional weight of that
Mm.
is what I think makes it a little bit different. There's something that you mentioned though that I just want to go back
Yeah. Yeah.
to, and it's a part of that journey, and I'm gonna reference a completely different movie about this,
Mm.
but in the beginning of the movie, the kid sees revenge as like something that is completely driven by hate,
Mm.
right? He hates the guy and he wants to kill him as a result. When he almost gets killed and he goes to that church and he kind of is forced to remember his past,
Mm.
remember his mother, remember the love, it almost gives him the other reason for why he's fighting. It's not just that he hates the Yorana and like what he did, but it's also because he loved his
All
mother
right.
and how much she meant to him. And what it reminds me of is, and you'll remember this reference point. Remember in X-Men First Class, where Professor Xavier is trying to teach Magneto how to use all of his power,
Mm.
and it's like not just the anger, it's the anger and the love together that
Right.
really allows him to tap into it. I think the character that you get in the end, Dev Patel's character, the kid in the end, is now in alignment between like he's got righteous
Mm.
indignation. He was vengeance before. Now he's righteousness,
Yes.
and because of that, I think that's why he moves through the movie the way that he does in the last 30 minutes, which is like fantastic. The last 30 minutes of this
Oh
is
yeah.
awesome.
Oh yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly on those points. Matter of fact, I touched upon that later on towards the ending of our thing right here, about righteous indignation versus
Hmm.
vengeance. I think you do need that totality, that balance, because it explains the purpose, tells why you're doing what it is that you're doing, and it's not out of
Hmm.
selfishness in a negative sense where you're being egotistical, but rather selflessness because you're willing to sacrifice whatever it is that you hold near and dear because you're
Hmm.
trying to make amends for a vicious wrong that should have never been
Hmm.
committed. It's almost as if it's an act so unspeakable that it goes against the very nature of the world itself. Um, and I think that's at the heart of this movie, that throughout all of these different themes that are mentioned, somewhere along the lines, evil has crossed the proverbial line. Like, yes,
Hmm.
there is negativity in this world, but this is beyond that. This is such a gross offense that the only punishment worthy of such is death itself. Um,
Yeah, and then the other thing is that it's continuing
oh
because,
yeah,
like you said, it's not that they just wiped out his village and his people.
yeah,
They're still doing that to more people
oh
now.
yeah.
Like the exploitation doesn't stop, and so and until they are stopped, they won't stop doing what they're doing. And it just happens to be that the kid is the agent of change
Well, that's
and resistance
yeah.
in this movie.
That's the thing. People only do what you allow them to do. So if it goes unchecked, they're just going to continue to do it because hey, this
Hmm.
is what we know. This is all we know. and this is in accordance with our will, and
Yeah.
no pun intended. And we are just going to impose it until it gets either some type of pushback or we elevate, if that's even possible, to an even worse degree.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I know there was another point you mentioned around self determination. What was
Yeah.
that point about?
Well, I just think that throughout this movie, um, the spirit or the element of self determination becomes a character in itself. You have Monkey Man, who is a cultural hybrid, and he's drawing from a very diverse range of influences and ingredients to create a very unique and complex narrative. Um, he's the child of self determination itself. He's training in the woods, and he's developing a fighting style that is very unique, and it empowers him and his people to actually say, "Hey, enough is enough. We're going to bring about change." Um, I think he reflects on the struggles that he had, and he's the living embodiment of independence and autonomy. He's willing and able to triumph over the very individuals who refuse to allow individuals to define themselves. And I think that speaks to the heart of self determination in itself. Um, this guy, he's able to move, like we said, move with purpose and honor. I think that's the chief thing amongst this as well. That element of being not just respectable, but the very epitome of all of the positive characters and attributes, such as integrity, trust, the worthiness of being the, I guess you can say, the avatar of Hanuman himself, where he's
Hmm.
saying like, "Hey, look, you are my worthy successor or progeny or whatever have you, to take up on this fight to the masses themselves."
Yeah. Yeah, and then like just on the point of the fighting, I don't want to underestimate or undervalue the martial arts in this movie. Dev Patel is
Oh yeah,
actually a trained martial artist,
yes,
right? So he's like a black belt
hmm,
a couple times
yeah,
over, and it shows in this movie. And one of the things that I actually really dug is about the dig about this movie is how efficient the fighting is.
yeah, no
The
wasted
fight
moves.
scenes are not, yeah, they're not wasted moves. It's not long, and it never gets into almost like a theatrical kind of dance. Like
Mm,
how sometimes when you're watching martial arts movies, it can almost look like a dance happening,
yeah.
and this one doesn't do that, and I like that. I liked that about it.
See, that's the weird part too. I wouldn't call it a dance, but I would call it a face off, if you will. Remember that scene where the guy's drumming, and
Yeah.
he's over there
Mm-hmm.
training?
I'm talking about.
Well, that
He's hitting the bag.
yeah.
Yeah.
While he's hitting the bag, I read during an interview that Dev gave where not only did he comment on his martial arts prowessness, but the guy he hired is like the end all be all of Indian music. Like he is like
Hmm.
the equivalent.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah,
drummer. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah.
I remember reading that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
that battle is going back and forth. It's not a dance, it's a literal battle where he's saying
Hmm.
like, "I'm going at you, I'm following in tune with the rhythm," and they're both being very creative, which is it's another outlet, if you will, that probably goes very, very underrated or even unnoticed, where your body is the means by which you paint, this canvas with the expression of, "Hey, I've cultivated myself into a living weapon." And the guy
Hmm.
is saying, I've spent basically a lifetime of honing my craft of being a
Hmm.
devoted drummist or drummer.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, well, we talked about some of the culture parts. Let's get into the cake, man, because I know it's a couple slices that we both have for this. I'm going to start just about, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I really like the final scene of this movie when he meets Baba. What was
Baba
it?
Shakti.
Baba Shakti. When you're like by this point, the kid has killed everybody,
Mm.
and he gets it. He gets to Baba Shakti, and what I really loved about the ending is that Baba Shakti, there's no way he's going to beat the kid in a fight, right? He just doesn't have the skills or the
Mhm.
ability. So he tries to do it with being sneaky, like he has knives in his shoes, which is what you would expect actually from him. You know what I mean? Like when you think about the character. But I just like how in that moment, it's not a physical fight. It was a fight who's gonna be like more crafty, who's gonna have like the more sneaky kind of skillful way. And he like the kid kind of overpowers him using his strength, his physical strength, but also using the knives against him, which is also like sort of like a cagey kind of way of dealing with him. And then, at the end, I think he dies from those wounds, and I think that's like a good way. And I'm talking about the kid now.
Hmm.
I think that was a good ending for the character, especially there against that big mural with the Hanuman standing in the middle of it. I just thought that was tight. So that was one of my slices on the cake there. The other thing, like we talked about the villains, man, Rana absolutely had to die. Like it, for what he did to the kid's mom, he like I would have. There's some things, like we talk about different movies. One day, the scene where he kills Rana is going to be like all on YouTube all the time. I'm going to watch that like probably once a month because I couldn't wait for him to get to that guy. So
Oh,
cheers to that scene.
oh.
That was a great scene, and I loved seeing it. The last thing, and I think this is one of the really unique aspects of the movie. Dev Patel, who we by the way we have to mention, wrote, directed, produced this. He was very intentional about infusing aspects of Hindu culture into this movie and Hindu spirituality. The focus on Hanuman and talking about the place that he holds amongst the Hindu deities
Mm,
and what he represents is so carried over well and through the movie. So it's like, when you think about Hanuman as like, the deity of martial artists, of people who are trying to overcome oppression, representing the brave, representing those who fight on behalf of others, it makes perfect sense that that's the reference point for this movie. And I appreciated the learning about that through the course of this movie because my reference for Hanuman was from Black Panther.
mhm.
Like we talked about this in pre-production in Black Panther when M'Baku is about to fight T'Challa the first time, and T'Challa accepts the fight with him, and he says, "Glory to Hanuman." And Hanuman is also the king of the apes, and the M'Baku and all of them, they wore the ape masks, so that kind of made sense as that reference point there. But that was kind of the end of it. This movie expands on it so much more, and it really just gives you more into the history and the mythology around the character. So I loved that, and I loved how they incorporated it into the movie, and that's my cake.
Yeah, you made a great point in your opening slice, man, where you talk about literally the comparison and the contrast between guile and cunning, which is embodied with the kid,
Mm-hmm.
versus being sly, trickery,
Sneaky,
treacherous,
yeah.
you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean, with the old man. Like they both are like utilizing something, which is basically trying to be witty, trying to be
Mm-hmm.
inventive and utilize their genius. One just happens to be evil, and the spin on that
Right.
is trickery, treachery,
Yeah.
and
Deception. Yeah.
deception and deceitfulness. And whereas the other one is cunning, guile, very sharp-witted, sharp-minded. So I love that point that you brought up. Um, I had got to give you props for that. And then even your references, because it also shows from a historical standpoint the connectivity between all cultures, regardless
Mm-hmm.
of their ethnicity. Like there is a certain deity for each thing, and certain words are that they have in common. So kudos to you, man, for bringing that to the forefront. My three slices I'm rocking with is the implementation, like you, of the Hindu religion, as well as the
Yeah.
presentation of the Indian culture, them staying true. Like you
Yeah.
have the character of Sita, where she's being taken advantage of, she's being human trafficked, but
Mm-hmm.
their idealism of what beauty is versus a Eurocentric versus an African centric view, they may differ from here and there, but I think there is an overall standard where obviously she's not ugly. She's not
Mm-hmm.
hideous. There's a symmetry, if you will, and there's
Yeah.
certain things that are accentuated that all cultures find pretty loving, tender, ideal. So definitely kudos to that. Um, I love the fight scenes, like you said, like the
Yeah.
the,
Very
the
good.
close.
Very good fight scenes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, no wasted movements. These are all actual like practical moves. In fact, like you mentioned, Dev Patel is a a, a, a one dan black belt in Taekwondo,
Mm-hmm.
I believe,
Yep.
um, and very devoted practitioner too. That goes underrated. Him and his sister. Um, I definitely got to give a shout out to for my last slice is the feeling like I alluded to of that shared experience, regardless of one's culture or their ethnicity, the religion or spirituality. Like you have this sense of in the Indian culture, like family centric. You know,
Yeah,
each member is for the upliftment of the group as a whole. There is no rugged individualism as it is present here in the U.S. And I found that very touching. In certain elements, you know, and they're showing the highlight. They're highlighting the positiveness of the positivity rather of that aspect of, you know, one for all for one.
yeah,
It really ties into the movie and the motivations behind each character, whether it be their willingness to, you know, sacrifice their body, mind, and spirit, or their level of commitment to bringing about and evoking change.
yeah. Well, the communal aspect is huge in the end
Yeah.
because he doesn't overcome all those enemies by himself.
Yes.
So you have the people that come from the church and they jump into the fight
Mhm.
as well. And even the woman, I think her name was Sita.
Yep.
Is that
Yep.
was that was correct? Sita? She actually kills the woman who was trafficking her.
Yeah.
Like she,
Queenie.
so she gets yeah, so she gets involved in it too. So there, that communal aspect is there. The other thing about just the way that the movie is kind of the way it moves, that last fight when he has with Rana, that's straight
Mm,
out of Enter the
Megan.
Dragon. You know, in the mirror
Hmm.
room and everything, just the way it is. And then even the idea of going to the
Different
different
levels.
levels. I mean, that game
The
of death.
game of
You know
death.
what I mean? So like he's shouting out some of his, you know, some of his inspirations. It plays out in the movie well. It's a homage without being biting,
Yeah.
and I and I like that about it. You know?
Yeah, it's not too overt.
Yeah, it's not.
And the thing too, like, you know, I definitely got to give kudos here is in to Miss India of 2013, the actress who plays Sita. So I'm probably going to butcher her name. Please forgive me. Sobhita Dhulipala.
Sure.
Yeah, she. So it goes to show, like, you know, you have maybe a Cindy Crawford who tries her hand at acting, who was a model, whatever have you. You have a Vanessa Williams who was Miss Universe
Hmm.
transitioning over. So each culture, you know, like I said, they value the same
Yeah.
things, and individuals who
Yeah.
progress in that area try to transition because, you know, these things are overlapping skills.
Yeah. And then how about to have a whole cast where everyone is clearly of that
Oh
particular
yeah,
ethnic group,
definitely.
and the intentionality around that is something. I mean, it just lends a level of authenticity to the whole
Took
film
the
and to
words
the whole
right out of my
project.
mouth. Definitely.
So yeah, man, shout outs to Dev Patel on that choice too. All right, well let's get into the hate, and the hate is not, it's not hate, but it's like stuff we don't like as much. I don't have a whole bunch here. I just have two things. One is I did feel like the it just kind of dragged a little bit in the middle. That you could have probably cut about 20 minutes out of this movie, and it would have been just as good. And maybe the little girl in the movie theater with me wouldn't have had nightmares or as deep nightmares as around it. So that was one of the things that just felt a little bit long in some parts. The other thing is that I also just thought that the fight choreography, particularly in the first time he tries to fight Rana, I know they tried to do the shaky camera
Hmm.
thing. It's a little too shaky, and it's like it makes it kind of hard to follow the action, especially when it's in the dark. So like I know they're trying to pull from the Born Identity kind of fight thing, but that works in light. When you're doing it in the dark, it just is harder to follow. So those are two of the things that I just didn't like that much. But there's really not a lot that I can criticize about this.
Here. I mean, I'm probably nitpicking with the things that I'm about to, you know, discuss, but you know, overall, this is definitely a movie I would probably rewatch again. And as I told you
Yeah, this
before,
was a rewatchable.
yeah, these are
Absolutely.
things that I don't tend to rewatch movies. Um, but with that being said, you know, yeah, the camera, you know, the cinematography, it definitely when it's light and when, you know, they're in the zone and they're utilizing that up close, you know, very zoomed in scope, it hits. But in cases
Mhm.
like you mentioned in the dark or in the very close scenes, and I know that they were very deliberate about that. In fact, they used one of the um, stunt guys who is also a trained martial artist to hold the camera and be in
Mhm.
there when they're actually doing the various stunts. um, it tends to come off very blurry, unfocused.
Yeah, it does.
It's like an
Yeah.
overindulgence or usage of it. I know it's just too many of those shots for my liking. Maybe
Hmm.
someone else, it's their cup of tea, but for me, it's just not my brand. Um, some of the scenes, they just weren't very logical. Like you have this gun versus man. I mean, come on, man. The first thing I'm thinking of
Yeah.
is the Last Dragon, where showing off is
Yeah.
like catches bullets with his teeth. Like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. The hard part about the modern day martial art movie is everybody has guns
Yeah.
now. Like that. That's one of the things that really works with John Wick movies.
Mhm.
But it's harder here because you're like they would have just shot this dude.
Yeah, you have to move it.
Like, you keep trying to get around that. That's a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Those are good points, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Those
I
are good
also had a
points.
couple others too. I definitely the inconsistency. It's a very frenetic pace in some minutes or some
Mhm.
hours or part of the movie, and then the next minute is very slow, almost to a snail's
Mhm.
crawl. I know they do it deliberately in order to give the backstory about his mom and where he
Yeah.
comes from,
Yeah.
et cetera, and the utilization of flashbacks helps to reinforce that point. But when it's slow, I almost fell asleep. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
Mm.
And then last but not least, I just think that there's too many themes and subtexts crammed into this movie that's supposed to be an action movie. And when I'm thinking action, I'm thinking a nonstop, get at 'em pace, very frenetic at times, but still consistently pushing the narrative forward and forward. Here, you just have too many comparisons to Enter the Dragon, like we mentioned, John Wick, this revenge movie. So any of the Star Wars nine movies, whatever have you, just that overall theme. And it makes me even think back to when you were mentioning the motivations behind revenge itself. Yeah, we could trivialize it that John Wick, uh, his was about a car and a dog, but it was more than that. Like he says, his motivations were this gave him a semblance of the grieving process. The
Mhm.
dog was a gift from his now departed wife. So it's like the last message or her voice or action that will reverberate with him. And now it's been tainted. The car, if you watch the uh, TV series on Peacock, The Continental. This gives the motivations behind that particular car. I don't want to spoil
Mhm.
anything, but the car is very significant. It shows up, and it's the reason why John messes with that Mustang, the reason why he does everything behind it. So it's bigger than a car. It's the symbolism, what's behind it. And in this case, the revenge, like we talked about, it's very personal because it's his mother and she
Yeah.
is
That's
very
what I'm saying.
yeah, the significance.
Yeah.
But overall, in both cases, it's about the women who are the backbone behind the men that are supposed to be these, very talented, rugged,
Yeah.
self-imposing individuals.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I get that. I think like on the revenge side, you can give something value by having it as a symbol of something,
Mhm.
and then some things are the thing that they are.
Good
So like
point.
the car, the dog can be a symbol of something. Your mom is your mom.
Yeah.
Hey, your mom's not a symbol of your mom. Like a symbol of your love. That's her. Like you killed his mom. You're gonna go. You're gonna get up out of here. That's what's happening. But
You go
but
get up out of here.
the other thing, like the part that you mentioned about all the different things that are in this movie, I think it almost makes it like it's kind of it's called an action movie, but you could almost question: is it really an action movie? Is it more of a drama
Mm,
that has some action parts in it? And I know we talked about this in the pre-production as well. This is like a movie that might have been. It's very good as a movie,
yes.
but it also could have been good as a series,
Mhm.
like an 8-part miniseries, maybe on Netflix,
Yeah.
where it was going to originally land. It may have given more time to flesh out those details
Yeah.
and those characters, and maybe like kind of not make it feel so like you said, like the pace of it was kind of off a little
Yeah.
bit because they're trying to cover dramatic things, then they're trying to cover
Good
action,
points.
then they're trying to
Good
cover those
points.
parts.
Yeah.
So hey, but I mean, nonetheless, still a great project. So that's where that is. All right, let's jump to the questions, man. This is one of my favorite
Yeah,
parts
yeah,
of
yeah.
the show, man. All right, so I got two questions for you, related to the movie, but not necessarily connected to it. So my first question, and it gets back to an old saying, Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts
Mhm.
absolutely. So my question is, why, in your opinion, why does power corrupt so thoroughly? And I mean that because you see how the power corrupts the priest and the police chief and the lady running the club. Like, why does the power corrupt them so thoroughly?
I think just speaking from a historical standpoint, people are fallible, and when they are able to obtain anything by an easy means, um, you know, they basically exploit other individuals because they didn't earn it. So when you're earning something, you are able to see value in others. You're able to see whatever your religion is or your spirituality. You're able to see your whether it be yourself or God or the creator or the universe in those individuals, so you don't exploit them, you don't take advantage, uh you don't take advantage of the trust that's bestowed upon you. With great power is given to whom much is expected. Great power, great
Hmm.
responsibilities, Spider-Man, all that good stuff. So when you have these individuals who are practicing hedonism, they are utilizing the masses as interchangeable. They
Hmm.
don't value them.
Disposable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You tend to do these things. And as far as the fallibility, individuals, man, no one's perfect. So when you have all this thing thrust at you automatically, the first thing you're thinking of is yourself. You're not necessarily thinking about others in that same context. How can
Yeah.
I value? How, it's a first person narrative. You're not thinking, as most people are, of other individuals when you're telling a story. You're telling your story.
Yeah. No, good points. Good points there. Okay. I got another question. So this is another question. It deals again once the movie. I'm going to alter it a little
Yeah.
bit. The question that I want to ask is, all right. So in this movie, as we talked before, you have this intersection between the priest and the police chief and the person running the club. In modern society, which institution do you think has the most power? Is it the church? Is it the idea of law enforcement? Is it the idea of the presidency? Or is it the corporation?
Yeah, man. When you were discussing this in the pre production meeting, I thought I definitively had an answer. As I've had time to go through in my head, like, what outranks the other, I can't do it. I know it's a cop out. I know it's a cop out, but they're all interchangeable. And it's all about exploitation, it's all about taking advantage. So one can't exist without the other.
Hmm.
You got this thing, if you will, picture a pyramid or a triad. Um, and it's basically the motivations are financial. One,
Mm-hmm.
the money helps, grease the wheels, et cetera, et cetera. It facilitates the individual's ability to do or impact others however they see fit. Some people,
Yeah.
they try to be benevolent. Others, not so much. With respect to religion, a la Jim Jones and the phrase drinking the Kool-Aid. This individual,
Mm-hmm.
he was able to have others believe uh, uh, this notion that the end of the earth, the world was coming, et cetera, and he got them to drink poison, literally.
The cult
Yeah.
leader. Yeah.
So, when you think in these terms of individuals who are able to be so-called spiritual leaders, they present this father figure for some, piousness for others,
Mm-hmm.
stoicism, something that can be revered, the true and living embodiment of all of these positive attributes. And unfortunately, some of these individuals aren't that, and they're able to exploit
Yeah.
that. And then, last but not least, you have the government, where individuals are giving their power, their freedoms, and entrusting it to someone who is charismatic. And I think that's the common thread, that charisma, that ability to be
Mm-hmm.
loquacious and to convey very eloquently certain themes, ideas, mores, norms, all in one. And when you have these law enforcement individuals or people in power in the government, they're able to facilitate, the ability of others to do what they need to do or want to do, and sometimes they take advantage. And so you'll have the
Yeah.
proverbial rotten apple spoiling the bunch.
Yeah. It is a good. It's a hard thing to figure out
Mm.
exactly which one of those is most powerful. And I'm sure there are different times in history where different ones of them are more in control, but there is a definitely relationship between all those parts. So okay, cool, I'll accept that. I always feel like when someone says I don't really have a good answer to that question. That means I answered a good
Hey,
question.
yeah,
So
no, that was a great question.
pat myself
No,
on the
Dev,
back for that one.
hey, bravo, golf clap.
Golf clap for me. There it is.
So I got a couple of questions for you too. Well, actually, a few. Have you ever been placed in a situation that forced you to appease someone? If not, if there is a situation that could do so for you.
Yeah. So this is a good one, man. When you talked to me about this before, I immediately thought of like the idea of power
Mm,
dynamics. And so in power dynamics, sometimes you might have influence, you don't necessarily have power.
mm,
And power is like when you can make people do things that they don't want to do,
right,
right? And sometimes you're in situations where someone has power to make something happen that you are trying to influence a certain way.
right.
And I think when that happens, you are forced to, I guess appease is the word, to try to appease or appeal to the interests of that power
Mm,
to get it to work in the way that you want it to.
right.
And I've seen that play out a lot of times in more political kind of situations where someone or some entity may have power, but they can be appealed to for a certain interest of how that power is going to be directed. And I've definitely been in that situation. It's not comfortable. It requires a deft level of understanding of people and situations, and definitely having it read the 48 Laws of Power,
Mm.
you'll figure out a lot of that. So yeah, that would be my answer to that question.
Good answer. Good answer. Uh, my next question for you is: which wounds are more severe, those that are self-inflicted or those inflicted by loved ones?
How about that? So, all right. So here's what I would say for that one. I think that in the beginning, when you love someone, or you have like a lot of affection for someone, and they hurt you, it hurts more in the beginning.
Mm,
But the wounds that you cause yourself last longer.
mm,
So the hurt stays with you for a much longer time. So I think if it comes down to which is more painful, I would say the damage you do to yourself is much more painful because it stays with you longer, and you don't actually let go of it until you actually forgive yourself,
mm,
which is, I think, the hardest thing for people to do. It's hard to forgive other people, but there's so much, just in the idea of cultural idea of forgiveness that you can do that. To forgive yourself for your mistakes is very hard, and people carry that guilt around with them forever, to some people to their dying death. So I would say it's the injuries that you cause yourself are the most painful.
that's tough right there. Um, is faith alone strong enough to bring about change?
Nope.
Direct
Nope.
and to the
Nope.
point.
Nah, that's it. Nah, that's it. Nah. When you ask me that, it reminds me of you remember in the last Rambo movie, not the Last Blood, but the one before that,
Yeah.
when the people were going and he was like, yeah, they're gonna try to make a difference, and Rambo was like, if they ain't got guns, they ain't gonna make a difference, right? That's kind of depending on the situation. Like, yeah, no, faith is an important component of that. But don't get it twisted. Even in this movie, if the kid just believed that this was wrong but couldn't fight, this is a short movie. You know what I mean? He working in that club for the rest of his life, and he would have to figure out how to slowly poison everybody. Like it would be a much longer movie. He might still get to the same place, but he ain't gonna get there as fast, right? So the faith part, yes, I think in any struggle um, for liberation, faith is a foundational component, but on top of that, you better have some
Mm.
skill and some will and some ability.
That's tough right there. Last but not least, is Kid Bobby Monkey Man the reincarnation of Hanuman?
Yeah, this is it. So yes, I'm gonna say yes, and I'm gonna just talk about why I think this is, man. So I think that what happens is how we when we decide that somebody was like the avatar or the version of this particular deity, I think that's a discussion for human beings that happens like 3,000 years into the future.
Mm,
So just imagine for a second how 2,000 years from now, someone will look back on the story of Dr. Martin Luther King, it will very easily become like a deified kind of story because it's got all the elements of personal sacrifice and putting yourself at risk and fighting against the empire. Like all of these things that follow that hero's journey narrative that is embedded in a lot of us through different type of archetypal frameworks.
Mm.
So in that same spirit, I think the idea in this movie of the kid being the avatar, the representation of Hanuman holds up because he follows that narrative. He is the martial artist. He is the fighter against oppression. He is the person trying to avenge those that have been wronged. He is the person who has tremendous heart and tremendous love. So he takes on those elements. So that's why it matches up with the story. And I think that's also why they didn't give the character a name,
Mm.
so that it might so that it melds very well with the idea of this person is the human representation of Hanuman.
Yeah, that's tough right there. Shout out to CJ. Definitely, definitely. Much props to you,
Now
sir.
you, thank you, man. You laid them out really easily for me, man. I appreciate it, man.
Nah,
I see
no,
you put all the pins right in the middle, so I just had to be able to roll the ball straight, and
nah, no
it was gonna
lollipops
knock
here,
it
man.
down.
This is all skill. What you talking about?
It was gonna knock it down. All right, well, look, let's get into the popcorn, man. So, this is no, I'm not burying the lead here. I got this on 4 boxes of popcorn. I think this is not only is it a really good movie, I think it's a rewatchable one. I think there are parts of it, like I said, I'm gonna watch when it goes to YouTube one day. It's definitely want to check out 4 boxes for me.
No, that's dope. I'm definitely agreeing with you, CJ's 4 boxes for me as well. Movie hits on multitude of levels. Definitely rewatchable. I'll probably tag you or forward you the YouTube joint or the IG
I
post
can't wait to see
or
it.
whatever.
I can't wait to see
Yeah,
it, man. I
definitely.
can't wait to see it because Ronda deserved that. He earned all of that beating. I couldn't wait for that to happen once again. All right. So in terms of themes to close it out, I'm just gonna kick it over to you, Mr. Will, for main themes in this picture.
um, I wanted to create a story about the underdogs challenging the untouchable status quo, and that's from Dev Patel himself when speaking about this movie. Assistance of poverty, criminality, the caste system, sexuality, gender, economic inequality are on full display in this movie, Monkey Man. Monkey Man serves as a scathing commentary on the widespread corruption and systematic injustices plaguing India by using a complex web of themes and motif to critique the country's and entrenched problems. It discusses the utilization of various systems to establish, a very clear and distinct boundary. Um, these boundaries are never to be crossed, mind you. From poverty and sexual exploitation to cronyism, government corruption, and the worship of false idols, the film shines a very illuminating light on the way in which powerful systems are designed to exploit and oppress the most vulnerable members of society. Monkey Man crafts a very composed and also deceitful means by which individuals display depravity, immorality, hedonism, and duplicity. By tackling these very complex and intricate issues head on and directly, Monkey Man offers a very powerful indictment of the status quo. And it is a call to action to change and urge the viewer to not only confront the harsh realities of this unscrupulous world, but by focusing on the devastating impact that these things have contributed to Indian society. In the midst of all of this, you have the darkness and the film's protagonist combating it directly bodes a very powerful statement, and it's a force of nature, carrying the torch of hope and defiance against immeasurable odds and oppressive regimes and systems that seek to restrain the masses. Despite the overwhelming forces of poverty, criminality, and inequality, the bearer of hope still stands tall, refusing to extinguish the flame of oppression, of hope against oppression. As a force of nature, the resilience and determination and unstoppable, ensuring the those who perpetuate evil will ultimately reap what they sow once this destructive actions are born into the light.
There it is, man.
Yeah.
That's the the book end on Monkey Man right there.
But it also ties into our next movie, in which we talk about spirituality, the rising of a people, of the people due to an individual amongst them who is so charismatic and regal. And next week is Dune 2.
Yeah, how about that? So yeah, so please come back for that. Now Dune 2, that was in the theaters. I think that was March 1st
Yep.
that came out because I remember I saw that like first night it came out.
And it's still in the
Um,
theaters, mind you.
is
Yeah,
it
it's still in
okay? Good,
AMC.
cool. So listen, so we're gonna have fun with that one because that's a good movie. It's got a lot of meat to it, so we're gonna have fun talking about that one. Once again, man, the Sticky Floors podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcasts, we are on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. Your comments help us to do this better. Peace.